All right.
See.
All right, Coonbo, you can go ahead and turn your mic on now. And your mic is on. Turn your camera on now. Turn your mic on now. And your mic is on. Turn your camera on.
All right, hang on just a minute. I need to.
On now. And your mic is on. Turn your camera. All right, can y'all hear me okay? I think he's having a few technical difficulties. He's trying to figure out how to get in the chat. But I'm going to go ahead on and just basically, y'all, he will be over here with us in just a few minutes when he comes back in. I think he's trying to join back in right now. Steve, if you or Brandon, if y'all can go ahead and share the live, let everybody know we're live in the group chats. He's back on right now, and I'm thinking he might be still trying to figure out. Let's see. All right,
Yep.
We're live now. We're live now. Were you able to join the chat? I know you were trying to figure that out.
Yeah, I can do it through the phone.
Okay.
I don't know how to do it on the screen here.
There should be a area to you. Well, I don't know how your computer is set up, but it should be an area where it says post a comment down at the bottom on your desktop. If not, then you can do it through your phone and do it that way. But I'm gonna go ahead and we've got people in the chat now, and more people will be joining in with us in just a few minutes. And I went ahead and posted it to the group. But y'all, we're gonna go ahead and get started. When Coonbo here with us now, basically, I'm gonna let him basically tell you all who he is and how he got started in his research. And everybody who's here watching now, y'all just go ahead and share this link in the other groups and let everybody know we're live now. But Coonbo, if you would go ahead and tell everybody how you got into your cryptid Bigfoot research.
I imagine a lot of people have heard this probably dozens of times or bunches of times. I wouldn't say dozens of times, but I grew up on the farm where I've just moved back to here within the last month, and it's out in it's in northwest Alabama, near Muscle Shoals, and from the time I was old enough to know anything, or be aware of anything going on, outside my crib.
Mm-hmm.
I learned about Bigfoot, and of course, my dad and my grandfather called them catamounts,
Mm-hmm.
and my grandmother referred to them as the neighbors. And I remember when I got old enough to, I said, Granny, you know what? We ain't got any neighbors lives back there in those woods. And she said, oh, yes, you do. And then I heard other people call them Hanks, no heads, and hairy man, wild man, just various things like that. And my great grandmother McKnight referred to him as Nununui. She was either half or full blooded Cherokee, don't know which, but that's the Cherokee word for Sasquatch or Bigfoot is Nununui. But it was perfectly normal things. The way I was raised, they were just as normal as squirrels and rabbits and
Mm-hmm.
raccoons and stuff like that. We, and whenever we planted a garden out here in the spring, after we planted ours, then we'd go back on the back of the farm along the tree line and plant
And y'all, he's been having trouble. Like the area he lives in, I think his Wi-Fi signal is off a little bit. I know he was saying he did a show last night on another channel, and the Wi-Fi is off. He lives in the country, so where he's living at, hopefully we'll get the Wi-Fi straight. If not, I may end up, if we can't get it straight, maybe have to have him to call in and give his encounter or give his information. But I'm hoping that we can get him on here and it'll work out without any problems. But he's having issues to try to kind of get on and stay on. That's what's going on right now. But y'all just hang tight and stick around. We're gonna try to get this going. And he is adding him back to the stream right now. All right, you're back.
So my internet just went down. Let me go over here and tweak my antenna just a little
Okay.
bit.
All
I'll
right,
be
take your
right
time.
back.
All right, y'all. He's having trouble with it. He let me know this in advance. Like I said, in the area he lives in, he has having issues with the internet, but hopefully we can get this off without a hitch. And I just want to welcome everybody to the stream right now. Thank you, Al Sanarica, for showing up tonight. Marvin Allen, Dark Woods, Steve, and Pete Hasty. I appreciate each and every one of you for showing up tonight. So y'all just be patient with us. Hey, cats and peacocks, Eric DeVries, thank all of you for showing up tonight. But I'm gonna go ahead on without further ado. If you would go ahead on Coonbo and continue with what you were telling us, your introduction.
Okay. Anyway, we had several incidents that happened out here when I was very young, and I remember them very well because uh, back then we didn't have air conditioning or anything, and we during warm weather and not too during warm weather and cool weather we always slept with our windows open, and
Mm-hmm.
so I grew up hearing them hollering and stuff back in the woods, and um, uh, we had an incident happened where one evening we were all outside playing. There were um, three other families that lived on the farm here besides us and my grandparents. There were the Pedens and the Hudsons and the Terrys lived out here. And
I'm sorry, y'all. And it may go off without. I mean, if it continues, I think what I'm gonna probably end up having them to do is maybe call in. I'm not sure how it's going to turn out. I know he said that he had problems last night, but y'all just be patient with us. We're going to see what we can get going on. So y'all stand by. Give us just a few seconds. I know he'll probably be trying to join back in a few minutes. If we can't get it together, we'll try to figure something else out. We may get him back another day, but I'm hoping that we can get this Wi-Fi going on his end. Hey, Pete. Yeah. Hold on, y'all. I'm just sharing this. So anyway, y'all, hopefully he'll join back in just a second. Y'all give me just a minute. Let me see. I may have to send him another link. Hold on just a minute, guys.
okay,
Okay.
maybe this time. So anyway, we had an incident where we were all outside. A bunch of us kids were outside playing one night, and chasing lightning bugs or catching toad frogs and stuff out there under the uh, out there in the yard and such. And we had even way back then we had a couple of a yard lights or booger lights out in the yard. Had one that was over in my grandmother's yard, and the other one was in between the Terry's house and the Hudson's house. And where I'm sitting right now is where the Hudson's house used to stand. and we tore it down about 20 years ago, but and got this place here now. It's where my sister used to live. But
Mhm.
anyway, I was laying in bed one night and had to, sleeping and had the excuse me, that afternoon we were outside. We were, like I said, catching lightning bugs and toad frogs under the yard lights and stuff. And my we started hearing one of them screaming down the lane north of our tractor shed and our stables and our corral. And um, I never had heard one holler that close, and I never had heard one holler like as angry sounding as it was. And I remember we were, I was, Daddy, what's that, Daddy? What's that, Daddy? Or what's that, Granny? And and I remember Daddy told me, he said, "Oh, son, that's just that old catamount. Don't worry about it." That's,
Mhm.
of course, this was in around 1957, 1958, and the word Bigfoot hadn't even, it'd be another 10 years before the word Bigfoot would even be invented. And
Absolutely.
so um, so I we were listening and we realized it kept screaming every 15 to 30 seconds, and we realized it was getting closer. And as soon as the adults realized that it was getting closer, they came out and gathered up all of us kids and started taking us in the house. And I know we lived across a 40-acre field to the south of where my grandparents lived, but uh, the Terrys and the Hudsons and my grandparents' houses were all right up on this sort of this top of this knoll, and
Mhm.
where I'm sitting now. And so I know my Granny Baker grabbed me and took me in the house, and Miss Terry grabbed her kids, and Miss Hudson grabbed theirs, and the Miss Peden was over there, and she rounded up hers and headed to the house, and we could hear it getting closer. And then uh, eventually, my mama, I guess, I don't know if Granny called Mama or whatever, but Mama came over and got me and took me back home. So that night, I was laying in the bed. This thing just kept carrying on and carrying on. And that night, I couldn't go to sleep for hearing the thing yelling and screaming, and it was slowly getting closer. And um, I don't know what time it was. Probably 10:30, 11, 12 o'clock, something like that.
Mhm.
Maybe even after 1 o'clock. But it was. We started hearing it banging against the gate that comes out of that lane that runs to the north back over towards the river. And but there's a right when you get to the upper end of the lane, we had a gate that went across from this old storage shed and equipment shed that's still standing there over to the edge of the tractor shed. And we could hear it, and the gate was one of those sort of cheap galvanized metal ones made out of stamped galvanized sheet metal, so you couldn't even look at it hard without it making a bunch of racket and noise.
Mhm.
And we could hear the thing messing with that gate. And now the Hudsons had 7 coonhounds, and these were rough old dogs. They were plot hounds and a couple of Catahoulas and some big old black and tans, and those they were rough old gamey old dogs, and they weren't scared of anything. And when that son of a gun started messing with that gate, all 7 of those coonhounds came boiling off the porch and out from under the porch, and you hear them going over, and after the bugger, and and all of a sudden there was just this the sound of this god awful fight starting, and the booger was roaring and yelling. The dogs were going crazy and fighting and growling. And then right in the middle of it, we started hearing all this, these dogs screaming like they were being killed.
Oh,
And
wow.
it sounded horrible. I mean, I had dreams about it for years, but
I
it
can
sounded
imagine.
awful. And then in the middle of all that, I heard my grandfather start shooting his 30-30, and I found out later he specifically was not shooting at the catamount, as he called it. He was
Mm-hmm.
shooting through the trees and stuff like that over it to scare it away. He knew better than to shoot it directly. And my dad grabbed his shotgun and took off, jumped in the truck. Like I said, we were across a 40-acre field from where all this is going on. So we're talking about around 450 yards or so. And he jumped in the truck with his shotgun, took off over there, slinging gravel wide open. And he gets over there, and I start hearing his shotgun going off. And the booger, everything sort of got quiet. And then a couple of minutes later, I heard one more shot. My dad fired one more shot. And the next day, we went over there, and 5 of the 7 dogs had been killed outright and
Oh
torn
wow.
apart. I'm talking about arms and stuff, legs pulled off of them, and some of them had their heads. Most of them had their heads twisted around backwards, or their body twisted in half, and it was awful. I mean, it looked like a slaughterhouse in there. And one of the dogs, my dad had to put it out of its misery.
Oh wow.
That night, I think this happened, like I said, around between 11 o'clock and midnight, because by 1 o'clock that night, 1 a.m. that night, the Hudsons had packed up and everything, thrown it in their trucks and cars and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and left, never to come back. They
Wow.
used to run my dad's sawmill here on the farm, and they would come back. The guys would come back and work over here during the day, but they never spent another night on the place, and they just left the farm. And we my parents rented the house out a couple of times after that, but nobody ever stayed here very long. Um, the Terrys packed up and left not very long after that, and they built a house a couple of miles east of here and left. But that was a pretty. I can remember seeing those dogs all torn apart before my mom got me out of there, and um, it was pretty gruesome. Now, fast forward just a few months, and they're out northeast of here. There's a big oak tree that grows up on a low
Mm-hmm.
ridge out in one of our big fields, and my grandfather took me over there, and he never called me by name. He just called me boy, and he pointed at this tree, this big oak tree. Now, if anybody's familiar with it, when an oak tree grows out in the wide open and there's no other trees around it shading it, it will have limbs that go all the way down to the ground, and it'll be
Oh
very
wow.
wide across the bottom. You don't see them that way very much, because usually oaks are growing amongst a bunch of other trees, and the bottom limbs get shaded out and they die off. But this one had big limbs all the way down to the ground, and it would have made a absolutely perfect climbing tree. But Granddaddy took me over there, and we got in his truck, and we rode over there, and he says, "Boy, you see that tree right there?" And he pointed at it. I said, "Yes, sir."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Those catamounts sit up in that tree and watch us. And every time I come over here, they jump down and run off down that holler right there." And that tree is still there, and they still sit up in that thing at times and watch us. And they still jump down out of the tree and run off down in that same hollow to this day. Matter of fact, I had
Well,
that happen about a month ago.
was
And
that tree similar? The tree you're
but
talking about, Coonbo, was that similar to that sentinel tree that you found when you came out there on the old property my parents lived on? Was it similar to that in
well,
how the leaves and branches went all the way down to the ground?
correct, yes. But although that tree there behind your parents' house is a very, very large cedar tree, about as big as they get, the tree that there was that's on the ridge over there that's still there, just like the one behind your parents' house is still there. It's an oak tree. It's a big red oak. And
Wow.
now, back a few years ago, I really was. This is I wasn't living here then, but this is before I retired. But here a few years ago, when the price of corn got real high, the guy that farms our farm for us now, he was trying to, farm every square inch that he possibly could because, he could make more money. And he cut the bottom limbs off that big oak. And that really sort of broke my heart. And but the tree is still alive and doing good. But they're still going up climbing the tree anyway. But they still sit up there at times. Now, interesting thing he also said. He says, I don't want to hear about you coming back here trying to climb up in that tree. Well, I wasn't but 3 years old, and the thought of climbing a tree had never entered my mind. But that stuck with me because it was such an unusual thing. And then the really weird thing he said, and if I hear about you bringing your little sister back here, I'll tear your rear end up, boy. You understand me? I said,
Right.
yes, sir. Now, I thought that was even more weird because my little sister, I don't even know if she was 2 years old yet. And she was still still most good bit of the time in the crib, in the baby crib. Well, what I didn't know then, and I didn't realize for years later, until I was an adult, that one just a few months, couple of 3 months after this, that he died. And I think he knew he was dying, and he was trying to, pass on information, to us and trying to teach us some before he was gone. Now, fast forward another year, I was 4 years old, and my dad built the house that I was raised in out of. They actually went into the town of Sheffield and got bricks out of where the old Sheffield Hotel had burned down. And I can remember my mother and my dad sitting out there, and they brought pickup truckloads of these old bricks out of that burned down hotel out here to the farm. And I can remember my mom and dad sitting there chipping the old mortar off those bricks. Oh, wow. And that's what they built the house out of that I was raised in. And then the lumber that went into that house was cut right here on the farm. And he took it into a place called Walker Lumber in Tuscumbia and had it not treated, but what do they call it? Kiln dried. He had the lumber dried to kill the bugs in it and stuff like that. And he bartered and traded for shingles and stuff like that. Well, the house didn't have any gutters on it. And this dirt out here is this old red clay dirt. In fact, the registered name of the farm was Redlands Farm, because of the red clay dirt. And when it would rain, the water would run off the roof and hit that dirt down there around the edge of the house, and it would cut into it, and old red mud would splash up on the side of the house. And my mom just didn't like that at all. So we had it was still there. We got an old gravel pit here on the farm that Daddy used to sell gravel to the county. So he got them while they were over here getting gravel for the county. He got them to bring a few loads of gravel up here and dump it by the house. And he spread this about a 4-foot wide strip of gravel around the outside of the house. So I'm 4 years old, and it's summertime, and again, we didn't have air conditioning, so we slept with the windows open. They put a attic fan in there right in the middle of the house, and it would suck air through the windows and exhaust it out through the roof fence. And but that air coming in at night would keep us cool. You'd open the window, crank the windows open. We had those old crank out casement windows with the screens on the inside.
Yes.
You'd crank those windows out and sleep right up there next to them, and it'd keep you relatively cool at night because we weren't used to air conditioning, so we didn't know any better. It felt cool to us. So I'm laying in bed, and it always took me when I was a kid, a long time to go to sleep. And I'm laying there in bed, and I hear gravel crunching around the side outside near my window. The 4-year-old kid doesn't think real logically, and my first thought was, well, that's Danny Terry coming over here to play, or one of the Peden boys or something like that, and so I got up on my hands and knees and raised up the screen, and you had the little latches on the bottom screen. They pulled out, and
I know what you're talking
pulled
about.
that screen out, and I leaned forward and I looked out that window. I looked to the right, and there was nothing. I looked to the left, and that's the first time I ever saw one. There was a
Wow.
one about 6, 7 feet tall, and he was up against the side of the house. He was sideways. I'll see if I can get back and do it. But he was sideways, and he had his palm flat against the side of the house, and he was leaned back like this. And he had his head turned, looking at me, and he was sort of reddish auburn colored hair, and it was a clear night, and the moon was up, pretty bright moon, probably about like full moon is coming up tonight, but that moon was glinting in its hair, and it looked like to me a 4-year-old kid that he had blood in his hair, and it was reflecting yellow in his eyes, because where he was on the south side of the house. My bedroom then was on the south side of the house, and he was facing sort of south. He was facing to the west, looking at me. So it must have been before the full moon, because otherwise the moon would have been up so high that or not high enough that it would have been shining in his eyes. But it was reflecting yellow in his eyes. And what got in my mind as a 4-year-old kid, I jumped off, and I was up on the top bunk. The windows were up sort of high in the wall, so I was sleeping on the top bunk. Right. I came flying off that bed and running into my parents' room. Mama, Daddy, there's a yellow-eyed, bloody-headed monster outside my window. And
oh my God.
And questioned me. They didn't do anything. My dad instantaneously jumped out of the bed, and he kept his slippers right there by the side of the bed. And when he jumped out of the bed, his feet went out no slippers, like a fireman jumping into his boots. And he grabbed up this big old chrome ever-ready flashlight that he kept sitting on the bedside table, grabbed the old Browning A5 shotgun out from behind the bedroom door that he kept there and loaded up with buckshot all the time, and goes flying out of the room, wearing nothing but his boxer shorts and that pair of slippers, and with a shotgun in one hand, an ever-ready flashlight in the other. And he yelled at my mom as he's going down. He said, "Doc, get the kids and get them in and lock yourself in the bathroom." And the kids at that time were just me and my little sister. And Melanie at that time would have been 2, and she grabbed us and went in the bathroom. The bathroom didn't have a window in it. And Mama put us down in the floor in the corner and sat down and backed up next to us to keep us hemmed up in the corner. And she had her 38 resting up on her knees, pointing right there at the door in the bathroom. And she locked the bathroom door. And that's the way things went for about 10 minutes. And then we heard down to far in the house, "Dot, it's me. Don't shoot. Dot, don't shoot. It's me."
Oh, wow.
And, okay.
And this was all
coming up the hallway now.
This was all here in North Alabama. This is all here in North Alabama, like out where you live, most of those areas.
Right here where Yeah, this happened like 300 yards from where I'm sitting right now. And
oh wow.
Anyway, so so my dad, we hear him coming up the hallway, and he said, "All right." He said, "Don't shoot." I said, "I'm right outside the door here." And so she got up and she unlocked that door, and she still got her pistol there, and she pulled the door up a little bit, and Daddy stuck his shotgun barrel out there in front of the door so she'd see it. He wasn't going to stick his hand or his head or anything out there. And she said, okay. And so she opened the door on up, and then she says, "Did you see it?" And Daddy says, "No, but I heard it beating feet over towards the shack."
Oh my
Now the
God.
shack was an old my dad and my grandfather, both my grandfathers used to build houses during the time when they already had the crops in in the middle of the summer when there wasn't much to do, and they and the and they would did the BF came when those branches were cut off. I don't know about that, Al, because I wasn't here when that happened, and I didn't come back here until like a year or so later. The very first time I came back was a year or so later after the branches were cut off. But anyway, they had an old lowboy trailer, and now construction companies have little house trailers that they bring out, and they set up on construction sites. Well, back then, this was 1959, and they had this little old wooden shack that sat on an old lowboy trailer. And when they weren't building houses, that old trailer set up in the northeast corner of that field, which just so happens is about 40 yards from where I'm sitting. No, not even that far. It's about 60, 70 feet from where I'm sitting right now. It's where that old thing sat. And
Wow.
he said it took off, went running up there towards the shack. Now, interesting thing, the hedgerow right behind where I'm sitting is still a travel route for them to this day. And when my sister and brother-in-law were living here, they used to encounter them on a somewhat regular basis out behind the house here, and they found tracks right here in the backyard. But my brother-in-law used to give me hell all the time. He was big, like a deputy director, assistant deputy director, or something like that with NASA.
Uh-huh.
And he used to give me hell all the time, Bigfoot, until they moved out here. And he became a not just a believer, but a knower pretty quickly. But
Oh wow.
an interesting thing, he had a Dogman encounter about 3 or 4 miles from where Bettina parents lived. And and 3 or 4 miles is nothing for a Bigfoot or a Dogman to cover in just a short time, very short time. They can cover that in less
Can
than an hour.
can you tell us about his Dogman encounter?
Yeah. He was like I said, they were coming home from he and my sister both worked for NASA, and she was like me, she was a senior engineer, and he was either a deputy director or an assistant deputy director. So he was some kind of a manager, section manager or something like that. So they're coming home from Redstone Arsenal and coming down Highway 72,
Mm-hmm.
US Highway 72, and they had come through Athens, and they were headed west, and they got down to just before you cross the Elk River, and just pretty close to where you turn off to Lucy's Branch.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, it's getting fairly dark, or it is dark, and he's got his high beams on, and like I said, it's 4-lane highway right there. The cleared right of way there is like 110 or 120 feet wide.
Mm-hmm.
And he said all of a sudden, coming out of the woods on the south side of the highway, he said this big, huge dog-looking thing came flying out of the woods, and he said it was airborne when it came out.
Oh
And
my
it
God.
landed on the south shoulder of the road, which would be the shoulder of the eastbound lane.
Mm-hmm.
One big jump, landed in the middle of the median, made another big jump, and landed off on the shoulder of the westbound lane, which would be the north side of the road, and then was airborne when it went into the woods on the north side of the road. And it really shook him up. He called me up. We talked about it for a good while, and I got a good description of it from him. And but he said it looked like a huge, massive, big gray, gray and black
Wow.
looking wolf or a dog. He said it had, big hump and ruff of hair up on its shoulders, and he said it had, German Shepherd looking ears that were laid back,
Mm-hmm.
and big snout, and but he said that thing was absolutely flying, and he was
And that
trying
was
to.
And that was
Do what?
that was in Limestone County.
Yeah, right in Limestone County.
Mm-mm.
Like I said, not too terribly far from your parents' house.
See, I told y'all, like when I tell y'all the Dogman encounter I had, that's Limestone County. He just said about 30 minutes from our
Yeah,
parents' house is. I told y'all this
yeah,
is hot spots. Well, go ahead,
yeah.
Tim.
Well,
I'm
it
not gonna
is.
cut you off.
Yeah, it is a hot spot. But anyway, so back then that's how I got started in it. And then when in 1968, when the movie came out that or when they had the special and it was on the theaters and everything, when they were showing the Patterson Gimlin film,
Mm-hmm.
well, all of us, all of us kids, I was 13 years old then, and everybody that saw it is, well, that ain't nothing but a damn catamount. That's just a booger, or that's a haint or a no head, or everybody had different names for it. Wild man, hairy man, whatever. So they
Absolutely.
got them over there too, and that was just amazing. And that's the first time we'd ever heard the word Bigfoot. And the very first thing that came out that talked about the existence of these things was National Geographic had a special on the abominable snowman just right before the Patterson Gimlin film came out, and it was on TV, and uh, they were calling it Yeti, a Yeti, and so some of the folks around here started calling them Yetis, and had a bad thing happen about a mile from where I'm sitting over about a ridge and a half over west of here. There was a family. I'm not going to call their name, but
Mm-hmm.
lived over there, and they were sitting up one night watching Monday Night Football. This is when Monday Night Football had first started coming on, and the county garbage came on Tuesday morning. So they had already filled up the garbage cans and rolled them out there on the edge of the road,
Mm-hmm.
right out by the corner of their garage. Their garage was really close to the edge of the road, and
Mm-hmm.
they had a lot that wasn't very deep. And anyway, they're sitting there, and they had a couple of German shepherds, and those German shepherds just started raising holy hell. And so the dad and the boys got up and walked up there and turned on the lights, and there's a bear out there rummaging through their garbage cans.
Oh
Well,
wow.
he just flung the door open and get them, boys. And the dogs went flying out there, and then the bear stood up, and it wasn't a bear. It
Oh my
was
God.
it was a big alpha, and I think it's probably the alpha that lived here spent most of his time over here. He was about a 10-footer. He was a 10-footer. He threw 22-inch tracks,
Now,
and
do we have black bear here, Coonbo, in North Alabama?
very rarely. And when we do have them, everybody knows about it because they're
Yep.
seen. And there was one that was actually that came out of Tellico Plains, Tennessee, back in the late '70s, and was trapped about about 3.5 miles southwest of here. But we knew it was here. I mean, we knew it was coming through here before it ever got here. It was making the news and everything. But these are just
Yep.
the boogers are here all the time. If we have a bear here, it's lost. We don't have a permanent population of bears out here. But now you go about 40, 50 miles south of here, southeast of here, excuse me, southwest of here, and there is a very, very small population of of bears here, and they're sort of stunted. They don't get as
Mm-hmm.
big as the normal black bears. I've seen
Like
two
in
or three of them
Tennessee.
while I was deer hunting. Say again?
Oh, like in Tennessee, like you're talking about, like the ones in Tennessee that they don't get that
Right.
big as the ones in Tennessee do.
No, they don't. They don't get. I've never seen one that I think would have gone over 100. And I don't. I've never seen one that'd go over 200 pounds for sure. But
Okay.
I've seen those a few times. But um, But anyway, this thing stood up, and unfortunately, one of the German shepherds was already in the air, and it just reached up and grabbed it, and it twisted its head around backwards, and
Oh
it
my God.
threw the poor dog. It threw the dog up on the roof of their house, and the other dog was skidding and trying to get away, and um, it caught that dog and by the back legs, and it twisted it, and it broke its back right behind the rib cage, and threw it, and it slid across their back porch and out into the yard between them and the next door neighbor's house to the north. And I saw that dog, and it was laying there on the ground, and the back legs were facing one way, and the front legs were facing the other way, and it
Oh my
actually
Lord.
twisted the dog's backbone 180 degrees. It killed both of those dogs in just split seconds. And he came to school telling that story, and everybody teased him mercilessly. And he was talking about a Yeti killed his dogs, and they teased that guy mercilessly for years and years. But it was yeah. I say Mary says she remembers when that came on. And that's when television still ran off of a hand crank, if you remember, Mary. Just kidding.
Oh my goodness, that was before my time.
But no, this is around 1967, 68 when that special came on. But that's how I, learned about, got introduced to Bigfoot. But I started calling them. I called one for the first time when I was 13, and it actually came to me. It came. My dad and I were bass fishing down on the river in a place called Coffee Slough, which is down the river below Florence. And we were up in Coffee Slough, and we heard one start yelling up there and head into the slough. And this is early in the morning, and real early in the morning. And I said, Daddy, I think I'm going to try calling it. He said, go ahead. So I cut loose, and that call was just terrible. I mean, it was. And I said,
Y'all, he's so
he
good.
done? But
Can you, Coonbo, can you hear me?
Y'all there?
Your audio is cutting out a little bit.
Yeah, I hear you. Uh-huh.
Keep talking because we're trying to get you back.
Uh-oh. Can y'all hear me? Maybe I need to go wiggle that antenna a little bit.
It's trying to come back in. It's kind of choppy, but yeah, keep talking.
Anybody.
Yeah, you're okay now.
Hello.
You're here.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. I hear you.
Okay, you're better now. You may move your router again. He's checking his router real quick, y'all. And while he's doing that, I'm gonna cut this air conditioner off because it's like super cold in here right now. I don't know why I turned the air on. It's not necessary.
Oh, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
All right.
Okay, I can hear you now. Good.
Yes. So now you were talking about the dog that was tore up. Why did it why were they, I mean, what was going on? Why did they like to terrorize, and why do they like to rip dogs apart? What is that about? I mean, I guess you really can't answer that, but I mean, what are your thoughts
the dogs. Well, dogs are a food source for them, and plus these were German shepherds that the guy had sicked the dogs on what he thought was a bear, and it wasn't a bear. It was it was a Bigfoot, and I think it was probably the big alpha male that lived out there, because this is only a little less than a mile from west of our farm here is where this happened. But You know, the thing they don't they don't they don't like barking dogs and stuff. And you know, the thing had been out. They come and go out here all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
now I don't leave my dogs outside unattended at night. And I lost a dog down in Mississippi that she was I hadn't had her very long, and she was not booger savvy. And when I would go to work, would have to leave my dogs outside,
Mm-hmm.
and she barked and barked and barked and barked. And I came home from work one day, and they had gotten her. And yeah, I'm losing internet again. Dadgummit.
We can still hear you.
Can you hear me, Bettina?
Yeah, we can still hear you good here.
Okay. Well, but anyway, that's how I got started. I successfully called that one. I tried again calling that one down at Coffee Slough, and it came to us. And matter of fact, it came hot and fast. And in fact, my dad, I began to realize my dad was on the trolling motor and was trolling us out away from, further out towards the middle of the slough.
Mm-hmm.
And he reached down and turned the trolling motor up on high speed, and the thing was still closing on us. And Dad said, son, hop down there and crank up the big motor and get us out of here.
Absolutely not.
So I did. I hopped down in the seat and cranked the motor, and he directed me which way to go to keep from hitting stumps and stuff getting out of there. But we used to get screamed at on a somewhat regular basis down on the slough. Hang on just a minute. I know what I need to do.
Okay.
That thing's sucking. My phone is sucking bandwidth. I bet it'll work better now.
We can still hear you really good.
Marvin Dogman says that's a lot going through. Yeah.
That's a lot.
That was but we grew up with them. I knew about boogers and stuff from the time I knew about anything. And anyway, it's it was a little bit, I had a few scary moments, but as a kid, but they weren't traumatic or anything. The ones here we have on the farm are the big type ones, which is the patty type, like in Patterson Gimlin.
Mm-hmm.
And the males get up around 10 feet tall and probably weigh 900 to 1,000 pounds. And the females get up probably 8 feet tall, something like that. Mm-hmm. And they're probably, I don't know, they might go 500 to maybe 600 pounds, something like that. But back in 1978, fall of 1978, I was squirrel hunting on the back of the farm. And back over there, and the back of our farm backs up to Wilson Lake. And there's bluffs along most of our waterfront. And the bluffs are, 40 to 50 feet tall. And where I was then was the bluff's about 45 feet tall. And anyway, there's a place back there. We used to have just an ungodly amount of mountain laurel back there. Mm-hmm. And we had a forest fire out here back early 1960s that killed off most of it. And so it was growing back, but it wasn't super, super thick then like it is now.
Okay.
And I was back there, and it was a beautiful October afternoon or morning, and it was a late morning, and it was sunny. I got back there, and I decided I was doing it, and I came across this beautiful patch of carpet moss, green carpet moss, right on the top edge of the bluff. I decided I was going to lay down there and take me a nap. So I did. I stretched out on the ground, and man, it had just enough slope on it. It's just perfect. And I'm laying there taking a nap. I guess I'd been laying there something like 30, 45 minutes, and something woke me up. and I felt that I was being watched. I could tell that there was something near me, and um, I knew that I better not just pop my eyes open and sit up. Um, so I just barely cracked my eyes open, just barely, and started trying to look around a little bit. And standing about 6 foot away from me was a mature female Bigfoot.
Oh my
And she
God.
was standing, there was a mountain laurel bush between her and I, and between us. And I could see her from her upper chest upward. I could see her breasts pretty clearly and see her face. And she was just standing there
Mm-hmm.
looking at me. And her face was 100% expressionless. She wasn't showing, there was no emotion in her face at all. I couldn't tell if she was mad or glad or happy or sad or was getting ready to tear my head off or getting ready to, offer me a piece of dead deer or, I didn't know whether to scratch my watch or wind my butt. And, and I was, and I actually thought for a minute that I was just going to flip myself over and go off the bluff.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't bother me because that bluff right there was only about 40 feet high, 45 feet high. And we used to jump off 60 footers on a fairly regular basis
Oh
in the
my God.
summertime. And yeah, that gives you a good while to think about what an idiot you were while you're on the way down. But anyway, but I wasn't afraid to go off that bluff. But I thought, well, I'm not going to do anything till unless she does something. And so I'm laying there and we're looking at each other, and this went on for about a minute and a half, and she never had even the tiniest flicker of emotion or anything cross her face. And then finally she just turned her head back forward and just walked off on past me and down the hill and going down towards the slough. And that's when I really got scared because when she was gone and I could hear her steps fading away, I got super scared after that
Mm-hmm.
because I felt like her mate was there close and that he was not happy that I was back there. And this was the first time I ever talked to him. It's the only thing I could think of to do other than jump off, roll off that bluff. And I just told him, I just said, I'm sorry. Please don't hurt me. I'm sorry. I'm back here and disturbing your area.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a gun here with me. But if you'll let me get up and walk out of here and won't hurt me, I'll walk out of here the fastest way that I can, and I won't come back. And just please don't hurt me. I don't want to hurt you, and I'm sorry I'm disturbing that I've intruded in your territory. And so I slowly sat up and started, and I started walking to the south. And I was a little bit over from that point there. You're a little bit over a mile from the house, and I walked straight out of those woods the most direct way that I could, and I kept my head down. I kept my little 22 rifle pointed to the ground, and I didn't go from this is in 1978, and I didn't go back over there until this past October. And I didn't. But I went back over there just to see what it was like, and I took one of my friends, Jimmy Osmer, went with me, and we went back over there and poked around, and didn't see or
Well,
hear anything while we were there. But
I
um,
got some questions for you, myself
we've got
personally.
sure, go ahead.
Okay, so Pete Hasty wants to know: can you talk about this? Can we ask Coonbo about the LBL attacks and his thoughts on the Roger situation? The guy Roger who came up years later, I guess, and said that he was there when all of this happened.
Well, I've got some pretty good insight. Yeah. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound loud and clear. Can y'all
Can
hear
y'all hear
Coonbo
me
all
okay?
right? I think they can. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I have an acquaintance that used to be a ranger there in LBL. Now, he was not there when the family was killed in 82 or 83, whenever it was. I think 82. However, he was there when the bow hunter was killed in the early 2000s. And he was one of the first two um, he was one of the first two guys on the scene that found uh, the torn up tent and found his broken bow laying on the ground and
Mhm.
blood and stuff like that and pieces of clothing, and found the drag marks where he had been drug off.
Okay.
And he was one of the two guys that followed the drag line and found the guy's body that had been fed on. Now, when that incident happened, they drug out the files for the when the family was slaughtered in back in 82. And so he had an opportunity to see all of the files and all the data and stuff from that incident.
Mhm.
He um, uh, it had everything in there and a lot of stuff that he wouldn't even tell me about, but everything was in there. Now, there was nobody else. There was nobody that survived that. There was only 4 people there when that family was killed. And the guy that was saying that he was there, he claimed that he hid up under the frame of that Winnebago.
Mhm.
Now, I went to the trouble of hunting down one of those Winnebagos just like what those people had. And um, I couldn't find I couldn't find an actual one, but what I found was I found out what kind of a truck chassis it was built on.
Okay.
Now, there's a possibility that somebody could have. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely. You sound great.
Can y'all
It's
hear me?
clear. Can y'all hear
Okay.
Coonbo okay?
All right. There is a possibility.
I'm waiting. Yeah,
Uh,
they can hear you.
there is there is a possibility. Okay. There's a possibility that someone could have laid up on the rear axle or up on the drive shaft. But that's no protection from one of these creatures. Also, the guy claimed that he shot and killed one with a 410 gauge single barrel shotgun using birdshot. Now, I grew up bird hunting. Bird hunting is when you hear country folks talking about bird hunting, they're talking about quail hunting.
Okay.
And most of our quail hunting was done with 20 gauge. Say again.
No, I was just saying
Go
okay to
ahead.
what you were saying. No, you go ahead. I was just agreeing with you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Most bird hunting or quail hunting is done with 20 gauge or 12 gauge shotguns. And if you're in a 410 shotgun, single barrel shotgun of that day and age, the most it could have had was a 3-inch shell, and those things only held about maybe a half ounce, at most 5/8 of an ounce of shot. A 20 gauge shell back then, the cheap ones that everybody, the cheapest ones you could get back then had 7/8 of an ounce of shot. The ones uh, we used field loads, and all of those had an ounce of shot. The 12 gauge loads that we used all had an ounce and an eighth to an ounce and say 3/8. Most of what we used had an ounce and a quarter of shot in them. Now, some dogs, the dogs point. They're sitting there pointed, looking at where the birds are on the ground. And the other dogs come in and they do what's called, they back them. They see a dog pointed and they come in and they stop right behind there with their tail up.
Mm-hmm.
And they back that dog, back the dog that's pointed. And they wait, they stay there until the hunters come up. And then depending on how the dogs are trained, either the hunter, the dog owner can tell the dog to flush them, or the hunter will walk past the dogs and walk the birds up himself. At any rate, sometimes you have dogs that when the birds flush up, the dog will jump up and try to catch the bird. And there's been a lot of dogs have been accidentally shot that way.
Mm.
I've seen a 45 pound, I'm talking about only 45 pounds. I've seen a 45-pound pointer bird dog take a full 12 gauge load of number 7.5 or number 8 shot in its head and neck area, and it didn't kill it. Now, I'd burned the hell out of him. The dog holler and roll around and carry on, but it gets back up and goes hunting again. Now,
oh my goodness!
If a 12 gauge shooting an ounce and a quarter a shot at point blank range can't kill a 45-pound bird dog, a 410 shotgun shooting 5/8 of an ounce of bird shot ain't going to kill no 600 or 700-pound Dogman, especially a single barrel. If he shot one, if he was there and if he'd have shot one, it would have pissed it off. And that thing, he would have ended up with that shotgun up his rear end at the very least. He would have been torn to shreds. All he would have done, gotten his attention good and gotten it pissed off. There ain't no way that anybody killed unless he jammed the thing down its throat and somehow managed to twist it around when the barrel had to be pointing towards the heart and fired it with the end of the barrel down in his upper thoracic cavity, pointing at his heart. Maybe. But just shooting one, he ain't gonna kill a dog, man. Trust me.
Well,
I've seen too many dogs. I've seen and heard of too many bird dogs getting shot by 20 gauges and 12 gauges at point blank range, and it didn't kill. Yeah.
Now, just Coonbo, for the ones, I'm sure most people have heard this, but just in case there's anybody that's watching this right now that have never heard of the LBL case, can you tell them what happened to that family in that slaughter?
Okay. Now, you got to remember, you got to go back. Part of the hinges on the cultural head today back in 1982. Back then, it was all He-Man, and you wore your shirts open down here, and you had your big old hairy chest showing, and you had gold chains, all the guys, and they're big guys. If you go watch an old episode of the A-Team, or Miami Vice or A-Team, and see what old what they call him, BA, Mr. T. See how Mr. T would, how he would wear it, and they would slather. They'd put on about. Usually they had a big vat full of cologne. And after you got out of the shower and got dried off, you jumped in that big vat of cologne and came out all stinky and everything. Oh, but anyway, a lot of guys used a lot of cologne. And there were colognes and men's colognes that had a lot of musk in it. And it was specifically in pheromones, and it was specifically supposed to attract women to you. Well, this guy, the family came in there. Oh, and women, that was the big hair time. Women wore lots of makeup and lots of lipstick and poured, lipstick powder and Chanel No. 5 all over them, and that had a bunch of musk and stuff in it too that was supposed to back then. And so it was so people dressed and acted and smelled way different than what they do now. I mean, it was over how much some of these people, men and women, would put on put on this high-priced cologne perfume. So they're well, they've got a Winnebago RV, and they came into the old RV campground there at the north end of Yale. That campground was shut down not too terribly long after this.
You're cutting out
There's
a little
still
bit,
enough
Coonbo.
of it left that I can take you.
Your audio is cutting out.
Okay.
Let's see. Keep talking.
Is it better now?
Not yet.
Okay.
That's better right there.
How about now?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. All right. Let me lean back with it. You know, I want to.
Y'all give it a few seconds. Coonbo has got a lot of information. Like y'all really don't want to miss this. I'm sorry. Like the audio is out and like the visual and stuff like that, but he lives in a heavily wooded area. And I know that area basically because where he was talking about, he brought up Lucy's Branch, he brought up the Elk River and all those areas down through there. My phone barely works down through that area at all because the reception is so bad and the cell towers and stuff down there with us.
Okay.
All right, Coonbo.
Can you hear me now?
Back. Yes, we can hear you now. Perfect.
All right, I'm on. Okay. All right. So this family comes into the campground, and they find the site. They back their RV. An old well, at the time it was brand new, but it was a fully self-contained RV. It wasn't a travel trailer. So they backed into the RV spot, and so the man and his 10-year-old son, 11-year-old son, start doing the process of setting up and leveling the RV. And back then, all the jacks and stuff that now that they level them, so they had to get out and hand crank. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's one position that you're in, like whenever you're really clear, and then it's like when you move, it gets really choppy. Let me see. Say something now.
All right. How about now?
That's better right there. Y'all, I don't know. I guess like I'm gonna put it to y'all like this. Like I know he lives in an area where it's choppy. If I need to, I may just have to call Coonbo and then like y'all gotten pretty much lay eyes on him. If I need to, in a few minutes, I will let him just continue to talk on a phone call and just do it old school like I used to. But he's got a lot of information. We've talked, and he's going out on the property that my parents used to live on. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I seriously think that when it comes to certain guests that you have on the show, when they're really telling a lot of truth, a lot of stuff that they don't want out there, I think that this is what happens. And I've had this only a few times with certain other guests. When I had Jody Cook on, we had bad reception. When I had Bobby and her husband Rick Atterstein, we had issues with audio. So when you're telling too much truth, it cuts out. So y'all just be patient. But like he has a lot of good information, and I just want y'all to stand by to hear all this. And I'm trying to get to your questions as well. But like some of the questions, like he is in the group now. Coonbo is in the group. So any questions that you have, like you just tag him in the questions, and he will, when he gets a chance at his earliest convenience, be able to get to some of the questions that we may not be able to get to tonight. But Coonbo, if you would just pick up where you had left off, I think you were talking about the RV, or you were talking about what happened with the guy.
Yeah. So can you hear me better now?
Yes, much
Is
better.
It better or worse?
It's better, and the video is better too.
Okay. All right. So the man and the son were out leveling the RV, and the mother and the daughter, the 9-year-old daughter, were in the RV getting ready to cook supper or something. So now the father, he was typical guy. His shirt was unbuttoned down to here, and his hairy chest was out. It was showing, and he had the gold chains around his neck, and he had all the strong smelling cologne with the musk in it and the pheromones that's supposed to attract women in it. And this is late in the afternoon, so the thermals. Um, I don't know if y'all know, but there's a phenomenon that happens in the morning and the evening, where in the evenings the thermals during the day when the sun's up,
Mm-hmm.
there are natural thermal air currents that rise up with the land, follow the contour of the land going upwards, and then rise up into the air. Those are the thermals that you see hawks and buzzards and eagles gliding around on, and how gliders can stay up in the air was from these rising thermals. All right. When the sun starts going down or goes down to a certain point, the thermals reverse and they start going, come down, and they run down the hills. And
Oh wow.
if there's any water nearby, they go towards the water. And can you still hear me?
Yes, excellent.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. So this is late in the afternoon.
All right. So, yeah, what we'll probably do, I'm probably going to end up possibly trying to get him back for a part two. And I'm thinking I might do something different with Coonbo so y'all can get a really good one. But I'm trying to decide right now. I've met Coonbo in person, y'all, when he came out to my parents' property. Coonbo literally lives about, I'm going to say, about from where I live at right now in Madison County. Y'all heard him mention tonight. Redstone Arsenal military base. He's a NASA scientist. He worked out there at NASA for several years here in Redstone Arsenal. And y'all heard him say that many times, like on some of the shows that he's done before, like where he worked as a NASA scientist. Now, he's literally right outside of the neighborhood that I live in right now, literally, and the other areas he mentioned. So, what I may end up doing, because like the information he's got to share, Coonbo has been able to like, he's an OG in this. He's been in this since I don't know, I think like the 70s or 80s doing his research. And I really want y'all to hear a lot of the stuff he's got to say. We haven't even really gotten down to the nitty gritty of the questions that I usually normally ask when it comes down to this. He's backstage right now, and I'm getting ready to bring him back again. But I'm gonna probably end up doing this again. I will be going to Coonbo's property here soon because he wants me to come out there and check out his property and show me some of the stuff on his land as well. So I will probably attempt to try to do this again. There's some more stuff that Coonbo has talked to me about that I really definitely want y'all to hear. But I'm gonna bring him and add him back onto the stream now. All right,
Sorry about
Coonbo,
that.
you're back.
I'm
You're
going to be
okay.
getting. I'm going to be ordering this week an external antenna
I understand.
and find
we
out
had
where I can get the best connection.
Well,
But
I told them about the
he,
area that you live in because I know, like down there in the little Elk area, like near you, Lucy's Branch. Like my Wi-Fi, my phone will not work until I get back out on Highway 72, like almost
right,
close to like halfway back to Athens.
right, yeah, that's the way this is. Um, and this is as good as it gets right in here because I'm up on top of the highest hill, the second highest hill in the area. but,
Mm-hmm.
but anyway, so what's going on here is it's late in the afternoon and the thermals have reversed. And so the natural air currents are coming down and going down through the hollows and stuff. And this old RV park is up on a point or a piece of land that's right near the Lake Barkley, or actually it's closest to the canal that connects Lake Barkley and the Kentucky Lake. They're at the north
Mm-hmm.
end of LBL, and so anyway, so the scent of the guy with all of his cologne and everything on is going down the hill, and there's a big deep draw that right just right there next to this campsite, this RV site that goes right down to the water. What
Mm-hmm.
they figured out and this has been documented many times by other people in the area that have seen them, is
Mm-hmm.
that Dogman was walking along the bank, the bank of the canal,
Okay.
and caught the smell of that guy. And he probably, since that guy was wearing that cologne with a musk and pheromones in it, he took it that that guy was a rival, was invading his territory. Most likely,
Oh
this is what
wow.
happened. So he followed the smell back up the ravine from the canal, and he came up, and the guy was down there on his hands and knees cranking one of the leveling jacks on the at the apparently at the right front corner of the RV, and the it attacked him right there while he was down on the ground and killed him. Now, I don't know exactly what he did to him, but he slashed the body up badly.
Hmm.
Okay, the boy, the 10, 11-year-old boy, took off running to the door to try to get in the RV, and he's beating on the door, and it appears from the evidence that they found that the mother heard all the screaming and yelling, heard the boy out there screaming, and she opened the door to try to let the boy in, and the dog man caught the boy and killed him right there. She tried to get the door
Mm-mm.
shut, and either it broke, either it tore the door open, but they think that he managed to get a paw or a hand or whatever you want to get, that he managed to grab the door before she could get it shut and
Oh my
locked.
god.
And he came into the he crawled up into the RV. Now, this is a big creature. He obviously couldn't stand up in there, but the woman, any of you mamas know what I'm talking about. You go into full defense. It don't matter what it is, mama bear mode. That's what this woman did. When that thing came in there after her and her daughter, she went crazy. She literally, you've heard of somebody fighting something tooth and toenail? That's what she
Yes.
did. She fought that thing. She put up a hell of a fight. When they found her, her her bones were exposed in the end of her all of her fingers and thumbs, where she had been clawing at this thing and had torn her fingernails and the flesh off the end of her fingers, but she didn't give up. She
Oh my
literally,
god.
she had bitten it, she had clawed it, she had done everything she could to stop it and hurt it, and it eventually killed her. But from what it looked like inside that RV, she put up one more hell of a fight. It killed her. I don't know how long it took her to do it, but it killed her. Well, I don't know if it smelled the little girl in there or if it heard it or saw the little girl when it first came in there. But the little girl was in the back, and there was one of these little plastic accordion doors that she had pulled shut, and
Mm-hmm.
it tore through that, and it got her. And I don't know where it did this, but it killed the little girl and fed on her, and ate part of her. It took her outside, and I don't know if it fed on her outside or inside the RV, but it carried her off down that draw from where it had come from, and it went maybe 50 yards or so, 50, 60 yards, and it took her up a tree, and it stashed her body about 30 foot up in a big oak tree. And that tree is still there. I know where it is. And went off and left her. And then it went on about
Wow.
its way. Just a very, very short time after this, before it got completely dark, a couple came driving through the campground. Don't know if they were looking for a place to camp, but they were in a car. They weren't pulling a travel trailer or anything. They were just in a car. They came driving through, and they noticed the guy's body. They noticed the guy laying there on the ground near the right front corner of the of the RV, and they
Mm-hmm.
thought at first that he'd had a heart attack or something. They stopped and they got out and they went up there, and then they see all of this blood and crap all over the ground. They see he's torn all up. They see the dead little body, the little boy's body laying there dead and torn up. They jumped in their car and hauled ass out of there. Now, when they came out of there, they were within sight of the North Welcome Center. Now, I don't know if they had already closed up and gone home, but they turned They came out of there and they turned north and hauled ass out of LBL across the canal, and they ran up to the first place that they found, which was a service station, and called the cops.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was the Grand Rivers Police and whatever sheriff's office that is that responded first. They got there first, and I don't know what happened after that, but I do know this: it was completely dark, and they were still there looking around, and it was a deputy sheriff and a police officer went walking. They got flashlights, and they just had a feeling or something, and went walking down towards that draw. And they stopped and were shining their lights around down into that draw, and something started dripping on one of them. Had one of those old Smokey Bear hats on, like you see.
Those state trooper hats.
Do what now? Yeah, state trooper hat. Yeah.
Yep.
He had one of those, and something was dripping on the brim of his hat. And he thought, well, what in the heck is that? And he looked up, and it dripped in his face and got in his eyes. And he turned around and he was, dang, got something in my eye, And the other deputy looks up, shines a light. He said, oh my God. He said, you got blood all over your face. And there was blood all over his hat.
Mm-hmm.
And then they shine their lights up there, and that's how they found the little girl's body.
Wow.
But, yeah, so that's now. My friend didn't come directly out and tell me this, but there were things that he couldn't tell me. But I specifically asked him what happened after that. Did they ever track it down? Did they kill it? Whatever. He wouldn't answer me directly. He sort of hemmed and hawed. He said a couple of things that I was able to put two and two together after gathering little bits and pieces of information from around different places and through other people locals up there. And apparently they brought in a bunch of the airborne troops, a bunch of the guys out of Fort Campbell over there, and they sort of cordoned off the area. And I do know this from some of the commercial fishermen that I've talked to, that they had boats all out in the river. They basically built, put guys elbow to elbow all the way across from the Kentucky River shore across to the Kentucky Lake shore, all the way across to the Lake Barkley shore.
Right.
And then moved north, and anything that was caught inside that area, if it was brown, it was down. And they basically killed everything bigger than a squirrel or a rabbit. And they supposedly, and I've never heard this directly from my acquaintance, but I've gleaned this from other people. I have a pretty good idea where they finally hemmed it up and were able to kill it. And it was up in a deep, sort of almost a box canyon to the south or southeast of campground. It's where they finally hooked up with, or finally found it. Now, I have heard that they killed just it. I've heard that they found it and another one. They ended up killing two of them.
That's what I heard.
I know this, that it was so heavy, they tried to carry it up. I mean, they got a bunch of these airborne troops, and these are pretty badass guys. My son-in-law was a company commander in the 101st Airborne, and that's where their headquarters is, right there at Fort Campbell. And I know these are heavy duty, high speed, low drag elite troops. They got as many men around the body of that thing as they could, and they couldn't they could hardly carry it on level ground, but they were having a exceedingly difficult time carrying it up getting it out of that deep draw. And so they brought a deuce and a half back there. That's a 2.5 ton truck.
Oh
And it
wow.
has a big PTO driven winch on the front of it that you can pull back and make it winch off the back or the front. You can do it either way. And they use that winch on that deuce and a half to winch the thing up out of that draw and threw it up the back of that deuce and a half and carried it off somewhere, which I don't know where it went. And my friend didn't even know where it went.
I got one real quick Coonbo on that before you go any further, and I just wonder because I know a couple of times I've heard, and I know you did. You were interviewed on Jeff's show, and I've heard Jeff do a show, and he had an eyewitness on not too long ago, and I think that they were talking about a case where the Dogman was killed on Redstone Arsenal military base, and now there was also another one a few years ago. I think it might have been actually last year when on Dogman Cam show, John Bell did an interview. He had a panel of military guys on his panel, and the video was called "The Credibility of Victor." They were saying that 3 aggressive dogmen were killed in the Wheeler Wildlife Refuge in November of 2020 and then flown by a black op helicopter back to Redstone Arsenal military base. Do you feel like do you think, I mean, you mentioned the fact that you don't know, like, that's LBL, so I guess there's other military bases between that point. So but
No,
here, do
Redstone
you
Arsenal's. You live right there close to Redstone Arsenal, and
Oh,
Wheeler
absolutely.
in Wheeler Refuge butts up against Redstone Arsenal on the north side of the river, and it goes completely past it on the south side of the river. Now, if we got Dogman right
That's
here,
scary.
if we have Dogman right here in East Colbert County and West Limestone County,
Hmm.
there's no reason why you couldn't have Dogman and Wheeler Refuge. And we're only talking you were only talking, as a crow flies 30, 40 miles. And that's
I,
nothing. That's
I
nothing
told
to these
y'all
creatures.
it's hotspot. So when y'all question me and think that I'm making up stuff in the group, I don't know. Most of them don't think I'm making up stuff, but I'm telling y'all got Coonbo right here, right now. He live in Colbert County. He about 45 minutes away from my house right now. And I can be standing face to
Mm-hmm.
face with Coonbo. He got a hot spot for Bigfoot and Dogman. And he told me already Limestone
Mm-hmm.
County is a hot spot. So these things is all around here. Huntsville, Athens, Decatur, Muscle Shoals, Florence,
Yeah.
Rogersville. That's all up here. We got heavily wooded areas. Don't you live in a heavily wooded area right now, Coonbo?
Well, I got woods that come up here close to my house, but um, to the whole back of my farm, half of my farm is heavy woods, and I don't have to walk, but I can walk 100 yards and be in some thick ass woods that'll carry
Mm-hmm.
me back almost to the big main forest along the river. And then once I get to the end of that, I got about 150 yards to cross, and I'm in no, not even that much. I got about 100 yards to cross, and then I'm in another thick scope of woods. Come out of that, and I don't have but about 40 yards to cross, and I'm in hundreds and hundreds of acres of
Mm-hmm.
solid woods that hell thousands of acres that goes up and down the river here. And you can if you don't mind swimming some, you can get in the woods right here by my house. And if you don't mind swimming across Town Creek and wading across Big Nance Creek and a couple other ones, you can walk all the way into the city limits of Decatur, Alabama from here.
Yep.
And
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't want to go into Decatur, you can stay in the woods and skirt around south of it and get right back out on the waterfront. But yeah, there's the first. I started this seriously and officially in 1978, and it's when I started. I kept hearing all this stuff and talking to people, and I started I decided I needed to start writing this stuff down and interviewing with people. And
You should.
I actually studied some interview techniques and stuff. And so I would, and I sort of pre-formatted my paper, to make sure I didn't miss some of the questions. The very first interview I ever took was in October of 1978,
Mm-hmm.
and late October of '78, and it was from a family that lived about 5-6 miles east of where I'm sitting right here now, and they were describing an incident where uh, the father of this family, I will call them the Penny family. The father of the family worked second shift at Reynolds Metals Company, which is right here. It used to be the largest aluminum plant in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And he had two sons, and I'm gonna call one of them Knothead, and and the other one, I'll call him Sam. So anyway, and believe it or not, the older brother, I've never known what his real name was. We always called him by a nickname. But like I said, I'm gonna call him Knothead. So, and Roger's right. I was a rocket scientist for 14 years for NASA and the Missile Command. But anyway, uh, and I worked in mission control on a number of shuttle missions, and I worked all the top secret missions that they flew up until 1990 through 1994. So anyway, so I went and interviewed this family. And what had happened was it was the night of the full moon in October of 1978,
Mm-hmm.
and Mrs. Penny was Mr. Penny had already gone to work, and Mrs. Penny had the boy. She and the boys had eaten supper, and she was at the kitchen sink washing dishes. The kitchen window faced east, and she had been enjoying watching the moon rise up through the trees to the east that night. And Knothead had already finished his homework and was in the den watching TV. And Sam was sitting at the dinner table doing his homework. Well, Miss Penny looked up again to see the moon, and she couldn't see it. And she thought, well, that's weird. He was just up there just a minute ago. Have we got some clouds moving in or whatever? She leaned up to the window glass, and she's looking out, trying to see the moon. And all of a sudden, this big face came right up on the other side of the glass. And they were nose to nose through that pane of glass. And
Yeah.
and all she could do was, like that. And she starts stumbling backwards across the kitchen doing that. And Sam was sitting there, and he looked around and saw his mother. Mommy, and he saw the thing looking through the window, and it was leaned up, and it was looking around inside the kitchen. And he said that the light
Right.
from the kitchen lights, as it would turn his head, it would go from yellow to red to orange.
Let's get him.
And he was looking around, and it scared him so bad he jumped up so fast he turned over the kitchen table. So Knothead was in there in the den or living room, and he hears all this, and he comes in there, what in the hell's going on with Mama and Sam, And he goes in there, and now Knothead's pretty level-headed, always has been, and
Right.
he looks in there, and he sees the thing still looking in the window. Well, they had enough activity out there and around their house that their dad was a hell of a good electrician, and he had installed floodlights on every corner of the house and around under the eaves of the house. And he had what's called a low voltage central system, and he had 4 switches at various places around the house, and you could flip any one of those switches, and all of those floodlights would come on and light up the entire yard all the way around the house. And it just so happened it was one of these switches that well, it's a low voltage relay system is what it is. And there was one of these switches right outside the kitchen door. And Knothead thought clearly, and he just reached up there and punched that button, and instantly all the lights came on. And he said, "The booger, I mean, it's up there looking around, and he said all of a sudden it goes like that, and it takes off." Well, Knothead had enough sense. He goes running to the front door. He could tell which direction it was running. It was running out across their yard, their side yard, headed sort of at an angle towards the road. So Knothead runs out and flings open the front door and sees it running across the yard, and it hits the pavement, down the hill towards the water it goes. And so talking to Sam and Knothead and the mother, they described to me this Bigfoot that didn't match what I'd been seeing out on the farm, but I didn't know there was anything other than Bigfoot then. So I wrote it down as a Bigfoot sighting. Knothead was calling it the Goat Man. The whole time he called it that old Goat Man, that they'd seen it out there before.
Where was this at, Coonbo?
And I thought, well, do what?
Was this here in Alabama?
What?
Was this here in Alabama?
This was about 5 miles. Yeah, this is about 5 miles from my house, from where I'm sitting right now. And this is where this happened. This is the very first official report I ever took. And so he was calling it, he was referring to it as a Goat Man. And when I thought, well, I can understand why I'd call that, because a lot of them, they stink like urine. They have a real, nasty, strong, rotten smell. And a lot of times it smells like super concentrated urine. And that's what an old billy goat smells like. And so I thought, okay, that's just his way of describing it. So I wrote it up as Bigfoot sighting. Okay. About that same time, there's a hunting club about a half a mile or so from their house. And it used to be, it's not there anymore. The old building's standing there, but and the cook at that hunting club kept seeing this goat man out behind the hunting camp when they would when he'd come out to empty the trash or come out to smoke. So I heard about that. So I went up there and caught him up there one weekend, and I took a report from him. Well, what he described was exactly what the Penny family had described to me, but I wrote it down as a Bigfoot sighting. Well, and I didn't think anything of it. So let's fast forward. This was in 1978. Let's fast forward to 1984. We're getting ready for the very first Department of Defense top secret mission to fly on the shuttle. We had a contractor down outside of Union Springs, Alabama, that was building some very, very critical hardware for that mission. So they sent me down there along with some senior techs to oversee the final assembly and testing of that hardware. And we were staying in Troy, Alabama. So we got up every morning and drove from Troy to Union Springs. And the people that we had working on that project down there building this equipment, all of them had to have at least secret clearances.
Now, he didn't cut out again, but he gonna come back again too. Like I told y'all, like when I tell y'all I'm serious, like y'all have to take this stuff seriously. And when y'all want to be funny and stuff like that and say, B, why you don't want to go out there in the woods? Why you don't want to go camping? I don't want to go camping because he just basically let y'all know that Alabama is a hot spot. This is ridiculous. And so I was halfway scared. In a minute, if he get a chance after he gets through telling these stories, I'm going to have to tell y'all about the sentinel tree that he found while he was on my parents' old property, which I had already seen couple of times. I mean, actually, one day I pulled out the binoculars, and I thought, and I wasn't sure, but I thought I seen one in that tree, like actually blinking its eyes. And I'm gonna tell y'all right now, I don't like to share my pictures in the group too often because, and you know what, I'm gonna go on and share them because I don't care what y'all say at this point. I'm gonna share them because I do understand and I do know that there certain times sharing pictures comes with a certain amount of ridicule. And at this point, I think I've gotten so used to it, I'm okay with it. So I'm gonna go on and share it. Now, I do have a picture. I have shared it. Coonbo has seen this picture, and he saw all the details on this dog man. He pointed out that I already seen it. I already knew, but I just don't share stuff sometimes because I know a lot of the times when it comes to these pictures, some of you will say, "Oh, that's pareidolia." Some stuff is pareidolia. I've got a lot of pictures, hundreds of them. I don't share all the stuff I have because, like Coonbo told me himself, a lot of pictures, like a lot of y'all ask for pictures and good stuff, you're not gonna get it because I've gotten stuff behind the scenes from a few people, a few researchers that they don't share publicly. When it's too good, it is Photoshop or fake. With that being said, I'm gonna bring Coonbo right back into the stream and let him continue, and then I'll have him before we get off of this live. Hopefully, he can get to share to you a few more things with y'all. I want y'all to hear one thing for sure, the fact that he has an instrument that is able to actually call in Bigfoot and has done it more than once and it's been successful. And I'll let him tell you about that after he gets through talking about what he was discussing right now. So I'm waiting for he's on here and I've added him back to the stream. So I'm just waiting for him to get back on here. And I am going through the questions with y'all. I'm just waiting for him to come back.
Okay. Can y'all hear me?
Coonbo, did you want to? Can y'all hear Coonbo? Okay, I can hear you perfect.
Can you hear me?
Y'all let us know. Yes, they can hear you.
Okay.
And Coonbo,
on,
after you finish,
I'm barely. Hang on. Hang on. Let me.
All right, no, you go ahead. I'm just gonna get down in the comments real quick while you do that. So I do want Coonbo once he comes back, once he gets his Wi-Fi up. You know what? I'm gonna do something different for this because if y'all want Coonbo to come back, I'm gonna try to get him back. Since his Wi-Fi is off, I may even have him to come back in a different location where I can get him where the Wi-Fi is better. So we'll figure that out later. But I'll look through y'all's questions real quick. We're at almost 2 hours right now. Hold on. I see him trying to come back again on a different one. I don't know how to. Coonbo?
Yeah.
Hold on. Okay. All right, go ahead.
Noog the DJ asked if we still have DSL out here. We never had DSL out here. Best we ever had was the old 56K dial-up, and that's all been disconnected. You can't even get a hardwired phone out here anymore. And we actually had TV cable out here one time, and all the TV cable's torn down, and it's just hanging around out there. They won't connect it back up. So the best we got out here is you can either get old HughesNet or something like that, and it's junk. But anyway, back to Coonbo. What do you think about Victor from Jeff Naldoni's show? I haven't. Let me come back to that question. Okay.
Yeah, y'all stay on topic, please, because he's got a lot of stuff, and I want him to be able to finish. So stay on topic, y'all, if y'all don't mind, and if you got whatever question you have, like it's important, but try to stay on topic because he's got a lot to discuss. Okay, go ahead, Coonbo. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I'll try to speed this up a little bit. So anyway, so a lot of our workforce was going every day from over around Troy, driving up to out southeast of Union Springs, and to work on this project, you had to have a minimum of a secret clearance, and some of the things required a top secret clearance. So we were working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on this, and so we had a day crew and a night crew, and I had a senior tech that was running the night shift, and operations, and I was running the day shift operations. So
Mm-hmm.
we had a shift handoff meeting every every morning. It started at 6:45, and then every evening it started 6:45 p.m. And it was a 30-minute overlap. And so we were sitting there having our meeting that morning, and these two ladies that were always there on time came in about 5-10 minutes late, and they were all upset, and I could tell they'd been crying, and they knew something was wrong, and I could tell they weren't concentrating, they weren't paying attention to what was going on, and I knew we were at a really critical stage of the project, and I couldn't let them out there on that plant floor, and and they did a lot of the more critical wiring and hookup and testing of the gear, and these two ladies both had top secret clearances, and so I couldn't let them go out there in the shape they were in. So after the meeting was over, I dismissed everybody, and I asked those two ladies to come in my office, and I said, what's the matter? What's going
Mm-hmm.
on? Are y'all sick? And they didn't want to talk. And so I did y'all have a wreck? No. Are you sick? No. Um, were you assaulted or something? Well, no. Um, what happened? Well, we had I don't remember their exact words. Basically, they saw something that really
Okay.
upset them. I said, what, did you see somebody get killed or something? I mean, what happened? Well, you wouldn't believe us. And I thought, because during the time that I had been staying in Troy, I had been investigating a bunch of sightings out north of Troy near an old fire tower, and a bunch
Mm-hmm.
of sightings out southwest of Troy where they were building a new country club and golf course.
Okay.
And I just happened to have one of my books where I wrote my reports in. I happened to have it out in the trunk of my car. I said, y'all wait right here. So I went out to my car and I came back in and I opened it up to one of those reports, and I just set it down in front of them, and they started reading it. And and the whole time they'd been sitting there, you know, sniffling and crying and everything. And I mean, they were
Right.
very, very upset. And I said, this is reports that I've taken in the last few days. Look at the dates on them. And they saw it, and they saw that here I was taking reports about Bigfoot sightings in and around Troy. And they thought, well, one of them says, well, I guess we can tell you. Well, what did you see a Bigfoot? No, we saw a werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
I said, a werewolf? Where? And they described it to me. And I knew exactly where they were talking about it because I drove through there twice a day. And I said, and so I asked them what happened. And this is going into a right-hand curve on the road, and there's a creek bottom off to the right. If you're leaving Troy going towards Union Springs, up Highway
Mm-hmm.
20, US Highway 29, and there's a high bank. Well, it's been cut back now, but at the time it was a high, fairly steep bank, dirt bank on the north side of the road.
Okay.
Um, be the left-hand side of the road, and the bank was about 13 foot tall from the bottom to the top.
This is kind of
And
like a ditch. It's like a
since,
deep ditch.
well, there was like a creek bottom off on the right hand side of the road, and it came up, and right as you're going to curve, there's a curve sign right there on the right, and then straight across the road is it, you got the shoulder of the road comes off and then just turn almost straight up was this
Absolutely.
13-foot high dirt bank.
Oh
Wasn't
wow.
rock, it was dirt. Now, they Since then, they've had to sort of knock it off at a more shallow angle because it was washing. But at the time, it was a almost straight up dirt bank. And so I told them I believed them, and I said, "Now, can y'all? Do I need to give you the day off, or can y'all compose yourselves enough to go out there and work and pay attention to what you're doing?" They said, "We need to work." They said, "If you let us work, it'll help us get our mind off of what we saw." So I let them go out there and go to work, and of course we checked in behind them. And by the way, if y'all ever saw the movie called Hidden Figures
I
about the
saw that.
ladies up in
Yeah,
Virginia, we had
yeah.
one of those ladies down there working with us, and she was absolutely astoundingly amazing. She had a photographic memory. We would not have gotten that job done without her.
Was
She
this
was
when you
amazing.
were in? This was when you was at working at Redstone Arsenal.
Yeah, I was working for NASA then, but
Okay.
we were down there. We were down there at this contractor site to make sure that this stuff got built that we needed for that very first top secret mission that flew, top secret DoD mission that flew on the shuttle. So anyway, so I asked them if they would take me down there and show me exactly where this happened on the way back, after work that evening. And it was late enough in the day. It was a little bit later into the year than we are right now. So it was dark. I mean, it didn't get dark till after 8 o'clock. So,
Mhm.
or about 8:30, maybe 9. I don't remember exactly. But anyway, so when we got off work, we drove down there, hustled our way down there, and they pulled off, showed me exactly where it was standing. Well, it just so happens where it came up out of that creek bank, out of that creek bed, and our creek bottom, and stopped on the shoulder road. It was standing right beside that curve sign.
Mhm.
So at that time, I used to carry a stick of bamboo with me that had a white paper plate stapled to the end of the bamboo stick, and I would hold it up
Uh huh.
and stop me where the thing's head was, and I'd use that to and then I'd measure to see how tall the thing was, and exactly where
Where
it was
its
standing.
head was on that
So
sign. Yeah.
right, so I asked one of the ladies to turn around, and first lady stopped me, and then she turned around, and then the other lady turned around, and she stopped me, and the thing was around roughly 9.5 feet tall.
Oh my God.
And they showed me where it was sitting. I looked around, and I found where it had come up out of through the grass up out of that creek bottom, and I could tell right there where it had been standing on the side of the road. As it was coming up, and it stopped right as the ladies were approaching it, and the lady driving, she stomped on the brakes, and they said that it turned and it was looking right at them.
Mm-mm.
And what they said, the lady that was sitting in the passenger side, she was by far the most upset. She said it was the most. Both of them said it was pure evil. And the lady said that it was in the passenger side. She said she felt it trying to suck her soul out of her body. That's what
Okay.
she said. That was her
Mhm.
exact word. She said that thing was trying to suck my soul out of my body. And she said it was pure evil. And the the lady that was driving the car had slowed down almost to stop, and they were going to stop right there by it, and it was going to be just right outside the passenger door. And the lady sitting in the passenger, she started screaming, "Go, go, 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 go!" Don't stop, don't
Mhm.
stop. So the lady floorboarded it, and they shot past it. And she said she looked up in the rearview mirror, and she said
Imagine.
she saw it come across the road after she passed it. It came across the road, and she said it made it up to the top of that bank in 2 steps. Is what she said.
Mm-mm.
So I found on the side of the road where it had been standing, and I could tell where it kicked off. And she said that it completely cleared the pavement in one big jump. And I found its track on the other side of the road. The next track I found was about 6 feet up that bank, and the next track I found was about this far, about 6-8 inches below the lip of the bank.
How big was
So
the foot? How big were
that
those
thing went
prints?
from a standing stop. They were about 9 inches wide across the foot, across the width of the foot, and they were a little bit longer than that, but you could clearly see they looked like sort of like a slightly shortened, but much larger dog track. They had claws like a dog, very distinctly different than the claws of a bear or a cougar or anything else I'd ever seen. They were the claws were much straighter than bear claws, and way different, longer, and not as pointed as cougar tracks. I dated a girl in college that had a pet cougar, believe it or not. Her her dad owned Hughes Lincoln Mercury in Enterprise, Alabama, and they had a pet cougar that they named Sandy that they used in advertisements for the dealership down there. So
Do
I've seen
dog
cougar tracks,
do Dogman
and
footprints look similar at all
this was
to any other tracks?
well, they look a little bit similar to, but they're wider. They're not as elongated, but they look a lot like an absolutely looks similar to an absolutely ginormous wolf track, but
Mm.
the proportions are different. They're proportionally wider than any other canid track I've ever seen. But um, but that thing went. Oh, and I found the next track over the lip of it before it went into the woods. It made it from the side of the road on the right hand side of the pavement across the road in one stride, you know, and then the next place it one of the top hit the ground was almost halfway up that bank. The next place was just below the lip of the bank. The next place was on the lip. And after that, I didn't find
Coonbo,
anything clear, but it's
your
in woods.
your audio is going out again.
Okay. Okay.
Let me see.
Is it
Say something
How
else.
about that? Okay. The
Not
rain's
yet.
pain on the plane.
It seems like it's trying
Okay.
to get better now. Yeah.
Okay. I'll
Can you
speak
hear
back
me?
a little bit. But I hear you fine. I hear you and see you perfectly.
Okay. Y'all, while his audio was going out, I want to tell y'all real quick what I'm probably going to end up doing if Coonbo was down or up for this. We're at 2 hours and
Uh-oh.
10 minutes, and it's late. I'm going to keep him up all night, but I'm going to let him finish this story. I've got a lot more that I want to discuss with him, but we're at 2 hours later. So I'm going to is like I told y'all before, he is a member of the group, but I also want to have like if y'all want and if I get together with Coonbo one on one, I'm gonna try to have a live Q&A with him if that's something that works out for him. If it works with his schedule, he's willing to do that because a lot of your questions, it's a lot of them, and Coonbo is like full of information, and really we could really as much he's like an encyclopedia of information, but I'm not going to take up his time. Coonbo, go ahead and continue what you were saying.
So there I had the first hard evidence that the thing that we were calling it a werewolf, and it was not long after I started hearing it was some years after that before I ever heard anybody talk about a dog. And uh, so talk about up into the 90s, early 2000s, and
Yeah, it's
I've
cutting
heard
out.
a description like this
Okay,
before
perfect.
Did I go away again?
No, you're perfect now. It's great now.
Dadgummit.
No, you're good.
Okay, so I'm thinking I've heard this description before, and then I realized that it was those first two reports that I ever took way back in October of 1978. So I went back out there and, and to talk to the Penny family, and I was able to talk to Knothead and I wasn't able to talk to Mrs. Penny. Oh man! Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound good.
Can y'all
right
hear me?
now? Can y'all hear Coonbo? Y'all let me know.
Okay.
Yes or just
So
yes or no.
back out there.
They can hear you.
So now this thing had disintegrated, not integrated, because I found one of the packs was clearly on relatively soft ground. This is after it cleared the top of the bank. It definitely had disintegrated. This is what I classify as type 4, a fully canted base animal, not a type 3, which is like the 7 sheep, which is the baboon type, which they still have great meat, although they have on their types. We got the same. I went back and talked to the Penny family, and Knothead said, "Well, hell yeah, that's what we were trying to tell you, and you wouldn't listen." I said, "Well, I didn't know about these things then." And you called it a goat, man, and I knew that some of them stunk like some Bigfoot stunk like goats. And he said, "Well, I told you about their legs, that it looked like a big dog or a goat stood up on his back legs." I said, "Well, I couldn't get my mind around that." So this is one thing I tell all researchers that I talk to. Any researcher worth his damn salt, this worth farting it out whirlwind, worth a bit of a half a dime, you've got to be able to go back and look at your data under a new light. You've got to be able to admit when you've been wrong. You've got to be able to evaluate your old data under your new, in the light of your new knowledge. And here I was, all the years thinking my first two reports were Bigfoot sightings. No, the first two reports I took were damn type 4 Dogman sightings, fully canted Dogman sightings. And you know, that was just, it totally boggled my mind when I finally, after years, actually nearly 30 years, put two and two together. And you know, you can't, some of these guys out there, and I'm talking about very prominent guys, they're holding fast to the same damned old ideas that they've been holding fast to since back in the 90s, and won't listen to anybody else. They think that what they say is the only possibility, is the only way that could possibly be.
Absolutely.
And they're wrong. If you cannot look at your data, give it a second and a third and a fourth look, then you don't need to be out there. We're not here. We're not trying to just learn, just make this great theory and that thing is set in concrete. Hell no. Nobody's an expert on these things. Nobody's an expert. And anybody that tells you that they're an expert, they're a damn liar. I'll just put it that way. And I'm not an expert. The more I learn, the more questions that I have. The more I learn, the more I realize how ignorant that I am. And so no, I know he never let any of us even touch those pictures. That man has. Okay. That man, can you hear me okay?
It cut out for a second. He said, basically, I talked to Coonbo about this a couple of days ago when we talked about it, and Coonbo told me that the guy never gave him a copy of those pictures. The guy, you know, he wouldn't never let those
Yeah.
pictures out of his hands, and he couldn't even take a picture of the picture. The guy basically was holding on to it for dear life. He wasn't sharing it with anybody. He wasn't no. So he never got a copy of that picture.
Yeah. And we are, since that time, can you hear me? Can y'all hear
Yeah, but it's cutting
me?
out. So, yeah, it's cutting out. I'll tell you what, Kumbo, what we're gonna do. We're gonna go ahead and cut off. I'm gonna talk to you backstage, and I think I've got another plan for us, y'all. I want to thank you all for showing up tonight. I'm gonna try. Like, I'm gonna give Kumbo like at least a couple more minutes. Kumbo, can you try to say something else to see if it'll go through?
Yeah. I was say, never give us a copy of the pictures, never would let us, never would even let us hold them and look. But there is a picture out there, a bunch of us got together and tried to do an artist rendition of based on what we were telling. And it's out there.